Hi, I'm Stephanie Jaworski of joybaking.com. Today we're going to make a chocolate cake, and this is what it looks like. This cake is eggless, and it has a soft and moist texture with a delicious chocolate flavor. Now, it's really good plain, maybe with the dusting of cocoa powder or icing sugar, but I think it's really good when you put a rich and creamy chocolate ganache on top. And of course, the chocolate sprinkles are optional. So the first thing you will need to do is to preheat your oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 180 degrees Celsius. And you will need an 8-inch square, that's 20 centimeter baking pan. Now I'm just going to spray it with one of these non-stick sprays. But you could butter it or even lightly oil it. And then I just like to take a square of parchment paper, put it right on the bottom, like so. Now, this is a really easy chocolate cake. We're just mixing all of the ingredients together. Actually, this recipe has been around, a long time, and the original recipes actually called for you to mix everything together right in the pan. And kind of saves washing up. If you want to do that, which you can, I wouldn't line my pan with parchment paper. But really, I find it more practical to just do it in a bowl and transfer it over. So the first thing you will need is 1.5 cups, which is 195 grams of all-purpose flour. You may know that as plain flour. And then for the chocolate flavor, we're using unsweetened cocoa powder. Now you could use the natural unsweetened or the Dutch processed, which is what I'm using, just for reference. And I like to sift it because cocoa powder a lot of times has some lumps. Okay. And then you will need 1 cup, 200 grams of granulated white sugar. And we need 1 teaspoon, 4 grams of baking powder, 1/2 teaspoon, 2 grams of baking soda, and just 1/4 teaspoon, 1 gram of salt. So that's our dry ingredients. I'm just gonna whisk that together. This is a really nice snacking cake. So there we go. And now, for the wet ingredients, I have 1/3 cup, 75 grams of melted butter. You can use salted, unsalted, whatever you have in the house. Let's pour that right in there. And then I have, for flavoring, 1 teaspoon, 4 grams of pure vanilla extract. I am going to add 1/2 teaspoon, 2 grams of pure coffee extract, because now that's totally optional, but I really find a little bit of coffee with chocolate I don't really taste the coffee, but it seems to enhance the chocolate flavor. If you don't have coffee extract, another choice would be to add just 1 teaspoon of like instant espresso or coffee powder, or like I said, just leave it out. I'm going to add 1 tablespoon of lemon juice. Now, if you use natural unsweetened cocoa powder, which I didn't do, I used the Dutch process, but if you do, what you're going to find is there's kind of, I don't know the chemistry of this, but there's some kind of reaction between the lemon juice and the cocoa powder, and your batter, you will notice when your cake comes out of the oven, there's going to be just like a little bit of a red tinge. So if that's what happens, don't panic. And then I'm just going to add 1 cup, 240 milliliters, 240 grams of just water. You can have your water, I just have my water at room temperature, or even just a little warm, that's okay. And really, that is it. And we're just going to stir that together. So as you can see, you could do this in the pan. But I don't know, I find with a square pan trying to mix, I have tried it, I just find it easier to use a round bowl. Okay. So as you can see, this comes together really quickly. Nice weekday dessert, or, for the kids when they come home from school. So that's it. Oh, smell that cocoa powder. Now I'm just going to pour this in, and we're just going to bake it off. Okay. Oh, you can just use the back of a spoon, or I'm using an offset spatula just to even that out. As far as baking time, you know, everyone's oven, you know, is a little different. Sometimes ovens can be running a little hot, a little cool. I'm going to say 28 to 30 minutes. You know, it's always good to even check a few minutes before that, just to make doubly sure it could be done. You don't want to like over bake because then it's a little dry. So 28 to 30 minutes. So it's going to rise. When you touch the center, it'll, you know, feel done, spring back. You will notice that when your cake is baked, the sides of the cake just start to shrink away from the sides of the pan, and then a toothpick, insert into the center, will come out clean. So our chocolate cake is done. I put a toothpick in, came out clean. If you touch it, it kind of bounces back. And I don't know whether you can see this, it's just starting to pull away from the sides of the pan. So put your baking pan on a wire rack. We're going to let that cool 10-15 minutes, and then I'll show you how to take it out of the pan. So while that's cooling, we'll start our chocolate ganache. So in a heat-proof bowl, you will need 6 ounces, which is 170 grams. Now you can use either a semi-sweet or a bittersweet chocolate. You know, try to use a chocolate that you would enjoy just eating on its own. And I've used chocolate bars, so you want to finely chop it. And I think that my chocolate I'm using is 58% cocoa content. And then in a small saucepan, although you could do this also in the microwave, I have 3/4 of a cup, which is 180 milliliters, 180 grams of heavy whipping cream. Let's pour that right in there. And I'm going to add 1 tablespoon, 13 grams of butter. I kind of cut the butter into small pieces just so it'll melt. So essentially, ganache is chocolate and heavy cream. That's it. And boy, does it taste good. So now I'm going to put this on medium heat and let that butter melt. And I'm going to be very careful, bring this up to a simmer so it starts to have bubbles around the outside edge. You want it really hot, but if you let it boil, it really, it can overflow very easily. It kind of really foams up, so don't walk away from it. Okay, so there we go. Get that off the heat quickly. And then I'm just going to pour this over the top of my chocolate. Yeah, just going to shake it so all the chocolate is under the cream. And I'm just going to let this sit like a minute or two, just so that chocolate can start to melt. Okay, so let it sit for a minute or so. So now I'm going to start in the center with the whisk. Just go around, around, around. And keep doing that. Make your circles a little bigger. If you found, once you finish, that some of the chocolate, you have chunks of the chocolate that didn't melt, you could put your bowl over a saucepan of simmering water until it's melted. So that's why I like to finely chop my chocolate, so you won't have that problem. Now ganache, like I said, is simply a mixture of chocolate and heavy cream. It actually has a lot of uses. For example, if now that we have this, it's very thin. if I just let this cool a little so it's at room temperature, I could use it as a glaze and just pour it over my cake. But today what I want to do, and why I'm making it right now, is I want to let this sit at room temperature. And what it's going to do is cool down and it will thicken. And so that way it'll be thick enough that I can spread it on instead of pouring it like a glaze. And that'll take a couple hours. So that's why I've done this now, so that while our cake is cooling, this can firm up and then we'll be all ready. So I'm just going to let my cake cool, a few more minutes, and then we'll take it out of the pan. So now to take the cake out of the pan, but first, really, I consider this a snacking cake, which means it's kind of the casual for the family. So I'll tell you the truth. Most of the time, I don't even take it out of the pan. I just leave it in there and spread the frosting on top, and that's it. Like I said, you don't even have to put a frosting on it. It's really good on its own, or like with the little cocoa powder or powdered sugar. And you could also use any type of frosting. Today I'm using the chocolate ganache. You could use like a regular buttercream or a cream cheese. Really, whatever you want. But to take it out of the pan, I've got a offset spatula, or you could just use a knife. I just like to run it around the sides of the cake just to make sure it's not sticking, especially the corners. And then take a wire rack and flip it, and hopefully it'll come out nice. There we go. And just peel off that parchment. Sticking little, it is really moist cake. So good. And then I'm just going to put that and flip it so it's right side up, like so. So it's really warm. What I'm going to do is let it sit until it cools down, and then I'm also going to let my ganache firm up, and then when we come back, we will frost the top and sides of our cake. So now our ganache is set. That's what you're looking for. And just give it a quick stir. Okay, oh, it's gorgeous. You can even whip this if you let it chill even more. Like if you put it in the refrigerator and get it really quite chilled and firm, you can even whip it. But it's making this easy, so just now you can just spread this right on the top, or you could go down the sides of the cake. Since we took it out of the pan, I will go down the sides. So back of a spoon, or I'm just using an offset spatula, just spread it out. Isn't that gorgeous? Nice and glossy. So good. Okay, so there we have it. Really nice, just plain like that. But you could put either the candy sprinkles or the chocolate sprinkles, also called chocolate jimmies, on top. Okay. So now we will cut a slice. The one thing I like about a square cake is if you really like frosting, you can have the outside pieces. And if you're more like cake more than frosting, then have an inside piece. I like frosting, so I'm going to give myself an outside piece. So there we have, oh, doesn't that look gorgeous? Beautiful, moist chocolate cake, and then a chocolate ganache on top. The cake is, like I said, it's soft, it's moist. It's I'm using the Dutch processed cocoa powder, So it's a really good chocolate, not chocolate flavor, not too strong. And then you've got the chocolate ganache, which nice chocolate flavor. Like I said though, if you prefer, you could leave the frosting off totally, or you could use a different one like a cream cheese or regular buttercream or even whipped cream. So really this is a nice, everyday, I call it like a snacking cake. Have fun with it, change it up a little, how you want it, but try it. And until next time, I'm Stephanie Jaworski of joybaking.com.